time to talk about Australia. Australian republicanism, we are told, is increasing by the day, that they no longer want to be... it's ridiculous to call it a colony, but they no longer want to be ruled, as it were, by Her Majesty the Queen. They don't want to have the British Queen as a figurehead monarch ruling over them. They want to be their own state, which of course they are, really. But the Queen essentially is the ruler. They are still part of the British Empire, and many Australians think that's a sort of figment of the past and it's time to move on. But this week we saw a senator called Lidia Thorpe being sworn into the Australian Parliament, and she made her feelings very clear. Let's have a quick look.
I, Sovereign Lidia Thorpe, do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will be faithful and I bear true allegiance to the colonising Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
Senator Thorpe. Senator Thorpe, you are required to recite the oath as printed on the card, so please recite the oath. Order.
I, Lidia Thorpe, do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors according to law.
Well, there you have it. I mean, that proves just how much the Queen still does rule the roost down there, that senators, politicians, when being sworn into the Australian Parliament, have to swear allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen. And we saw there that Lidia Thorpe didn't like that idea at all. She called the Queen a coloniser. Let's talk to lawyer, political commentator and writer and a well-known Australian, Helen Dale. Hello, Helen.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
I'm all right. Now, if you watch that clip, you'd think that Australian republicanism was continuing in a pace, and it wouldn't be long before ties were severed between Down Under and Britain. But I'm hearing that's not quite the case. I mean, for one thing, I did a story only recently saying that Australians have been gripped by Netflix drama The Crown, and they rather like the royal family, and they kind of quite like the idea of sticking with Her Majesty, and there are other reasons. It's not quite a done deal, American republicanism, Australian republicanism, is it?
No, and I will put a little bit of context in Australian history here. There was a referendum on becoming a republic in 1999. And the pro-republic side lost. The result was 55 to 45, so it was the same as in Scotland with Scottish independence in 2014, but it's very difficult to change the Australian constitution. You don't just need a majority of the people like you did in Scotland or for vote leave with Brexit in 2016. You also must get a majority of the states. It's designed to stop the two, when you change the constitution, it's designed to stop the two most populous states, New South Wales and Victoria, from dominating the others. Mm-hmm. However, in the case of the Republic referendum in 1999, the yes case did not win in any state and won in only one territory, the Australian Capital Territory, which has the smallest population. Now, okay, you can say that was 1999, it was 23 years ago, but every time that this has been mooted and polling is done, there appears to be a reproduction of that result in 1999. It's possible that it's tied to affection, as it is to a large degree in a lot of other Commonwealth countries, for Queen Elizabeth II herself as a person, and Charles would be less popular. That is an unknown. It genuinely is. Some people may just like the institution. We don't really know. Also, you need to be aware that Lidia Thorpe is what's known as a crossbench senator. She's a senator for the Greens. Now, I used to work for a crossbench senator, but not the Greens, a man who was for a political party called the Liberal Democrats, which are not the same as the Liberal Democrats here. The Liberal Democrats in Australia are probably more like 19th century Gladstone-style Liberals, which you don't really have, except... Yeah. Now, and so crossbenchers it's important that they get elected. I mean, I was quite happy to work for a crossbencher, but you must understand that they're not representative of the great bulk of the Australian people. Like the woman in the big chair, the president of the Senate, is Senator Sue Lyons, who's a Labor senator, who was telling her, you must recite the oath. And they actually cut a little bit of her out because she said, you must recite the oath or you can't be a senator. It's like taking an oath in court. You can't give evidence unless you oath
but Lidia Thorpe was being historically inaccurate, wasn't she? She called the Queen a coloniser. To the best of my knowledge, the Queen, or Britain under Her Majesty the Queen, throughout her long rule, has never colonised a single country.
Well, it's not only that. In international law, Australia is considered a settled colony. It's different from the United States or New Zealand, where it was either colonised or conquered, which was why, for example, New Zealand had a treaty with the indigenous people, the Treaty of Waitangi, which was signed in 1840. So the history is different. And I mean, you could say now that we wouldn't think about things in quite the same way, but a significant reason why the history in New Zealand is different is because the Maori just put up a much more effective resistance to Britain.
Helen, let's cut to the chase. If there was a vote tomorrow on independence, on republicanism, which way would that poll go?
I'm reasonably sure it would be a repetition of the 1999 vote.
Interesting.
Particularly if in Australia there's been 44 referendums to change the constitution and only 8 of them have passed. And the only time you can get a referendum to pass in Australia is if both major political parties support it. If one of them doesn't support it, that means the referendum fails. And there's been long-standing research, including by a friend of mine, at the Parliamentary Library at Australian Parliament House on this issue. You must get bipartisan support or the referendum will fall, which is why there's only been 8 out of 44 that have been successful.
So there's a lot of affection still for Her Majesty in Australia.
Yeah, for the Queen. I do think it's important to say it is for the Queen. Whether that would extend to Charles, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I haven't asked enough Australians, even when I was working in Canberra and working for a senator, I didn't ask enough people to be able to be sure. So I don't know, but I do know there is a lot of affection for Queen Elizabeth herself.
What about you personally, before you go, Helen?
Well, if a referendum were held tomorrow and it was Queen Elizabeth still on the throne, I would vote against a republic. If it were Charles on the throne, I genuinely don't know how I would vote. I would have to go away and do a lot of thinking. Fascinating.
Great to talk to you, Helen, as always. Thank you very much. Helen Dale, Australian writer, commentator, lawyer, you name it, she's it. That was good to talk to Helen.